Hello children, how are you all? I hope you are all doing good. Are you all enjoying digital classes? Yes, I hope. So let us enter another session of digital classes. Children, in material and things, we have studied about different types of materials, isn't it? There we have studied every material has a particular property, like some materials sink, some materials float. Children, before going to the topic, let me ask you some questions. How do you like to start your day? Most of us like to start our day with a cup of tea. Do you know what are all the things your mother adds in this cup of tea? Yes, this is not a single substance. This is a mixture of milk, sugar with water and tea powder. Then what is it called as? A mixture. Some like to start their day with green tea. Green tea is made by taking green tea powder added with some warm water. This is green tea. So this is also a mixture. Children, lemon juice. What is this lemon juice? This is also a mixture. We have added lemon juice with some sugar and a pinch of salt. Now your lemon juice is ready. So tea or green tea, lemon juice, these are all mixtures. So how are you going to separate them? So what is the name of the lesson, children? Separation of substances. Children, let me ask you some questions. What do you see in this picture? Here you can find so many different types of vegetables kept in different baskets. See how well they are all organized. A basket full of potatoes, a basket full of brinjals. What do? You carry it home in a bag. See this picture. You carry it in your bag by just dumping all the vegetables in the basket. After going home, what does your mother do? She arranges all the vegetables and fruits properly. She has separated all the vegetables and fruits. So, how did she do it? In this lesson, we will be studying about separation of substances. We have seen an example of tea here. The tea leaves are separated from the liquid with the strainer while preparing tea. So we have separated tea powder and tea by using a strainer. Children, how are they separating grains from the stalks? They use a separate method for separating it. You might have seen your mother churning the milk and the curd. What does she do? She uses a churner and separates buttermilk with the curd. So when you churn the curd, you see butter floating, which is separated from the buttermilk. So can you identify the substances in the mixture? We have seen an example of tea. What are the items present in the tea, children? Tea powder, sugar and milk. They all are man-made things. Lemon water, what is present in it? Lemon juice we have added, sugar and salt. Laddu, what is present in it? Flour, besan we call it, along with sugar and water. For the construction of our house, we use concrete. What are the things present in concrete, children? Cement, sand, small stones or pebbles mixed with water. We call it as concrete. It makes our roof strong. So answer these questions. Think about them, children. Why do we separate the things? How can we separate the things? Children, some substances float in water and some substances sink in water. Do you know which substances float in water and why do they float? Do you know which substances sink in water And why do they sink? Children, some substances are soluble in water. Why? And which substances are they? Children, some substances are insoluble in water. What are they? See this picture. Which substances float or sink in water? The substances which are heavy sink in water. And the substances which are light, they float on the water. Let us do this activity, children. Children, let us see what happens to this pencil. If I am putting this piece of pencil in water, what happened to it? It started floating. See this cap? It is also floating. Let us take an eraser. See, it is heavier. So, it has sunk in water. Staple pins. What happened to it? It has sunk in water. Pen cap. What happened to it? It's floating. A small cap. This is also floating. A paper clip. What happened to it? It is again sinking in water. Paper pins. They are also sinking in water. So, the substances which are lighter, they float on water, and the substances which are heavier, they are sinking in water. If I add all these substances, now this becomes a mixture, and now I am just mixing it. See what is happening here, children? The substances which were floating in this glass are again floating here. So, we can separate the heavier substances from the lighter substances, because the heavier substances are sinking in water, the lighter substances are floating in water. So, children, look at this picture. If you mix heavier and lighter substances, then the heavier substances will sink and separate themselves, and the lighter substances will float and separate themselves. So, the same activity we have seen, spoon, scissors, fork, all are sinking, and the lighter substances like duster, apple, pen cap, plastic glass, they all will float and separate themselves. So, this is the main property of substances we can use to separate the things. Lighter substances, when added in water, they float. Heavier substances, they sink. This property can be taken for separating the substances. Now, see this activity, children. Some substances are soluble in water and some substances, they are insoluble in water. Children, you know that sugar, when it is taken in water, a glass of water, what happens after some time? It will sink and it will start dissolving. If I add a little amount of salt, what is happening to the salt? Observe it. It is also sinking, and slowly after some time it will dissolve. So, the substances which dissolve in water are soluble substances. Just think that if I add mud or sand, then what happens? Will mud dissolve in water? Will sand dissolve in water? Think whether sand floats on water or sinks in water. Think whether mud floats on water or sinks. Now, what do you think when oil and water are mixed with each other? Oil and water, they are immiscible. Oil is insoluble in water. See this picture. Oil is floating on the water. This is a layer of oil which got separated from water and it started floating on the top of the water. So, children, the property of solubility can be used for separating these substances. If you take a piece of wax, sugar, sand, jelly and salt, all are mixed together and dissolved in water. What do you think, which substances can be soluble in water? Sugar dissolves in water. Salt dissolves in water. Jelly also dissolves in water, but it floats. It takes longer time for it to dissolve. What about sand? it settles down. It is heavier and so it will not dissolve in water, whereas it settles down. What about wax? It is lighter, so when taken in water, it starts floating. The property of solubility, that means whether they are dissolving in water or not. This property can be used for separating substances. The substances which dissolve in water will mix with the water, whereas the substances which are not soluble, they will settle down at the bottom. So when you mix sugar and sand, can you separate it? Yes. Sugar gets dissolved in water, whereas sand settles down. You will be studying about it. Children, let us come to the first method of separation, hand picking. In the starting of the lesson, we have seen that when we bring vegetables from the market, when you bring vegetables from the market, your mother washes the vegetables and separates the vegetables and keeps it in the fridge. How is she separating them? She is picking the vegetables and segregating them by her hand. So what is this method called as? Hand picking. So by seeing the color, size and shape, she is able to identify that this is brinjal, this is cucumber, this is carrot and this is potato. Isn't it? So hand picking is the process of separation of the substances because the sizes are different. So hand picking is used to separate the substances when their sizes are sufficiently large. Your mother might have been separating stones from the pulses or small pebbles from the rice by this method. What is this method? Hand picking. Here you can see in this plate there are different types of pulses and grams. How can you separate them, children? What is the method you can use? Hand picking. You can see different types of grain in this, different types of pulses in this. You can separate all these because they are of different sizes and shapes. You can easily hand pick and separate all these substances. So what is the use of hand picking, children? It is a simple method of separation of substances. From the dal taken in this plate, your mother separates the black color stones. Isn't it? So because dal and stones are of different color and size and shape. So unwanted pebbles can be separated. Even the small insects also can be separated by using this method called as hand picking. Let us come to another method of separation of substances. The next method is winnowing. What is winnowing? Have you ever heard about this? What is winnowing? They use it for separating lighter particles from the heavier particles. Lighter particles means husk. Heavier particles means grains. See this picture, children. The mixtures which are lighter and heavier can be separated. Here the grains can be separated from the husk by this method called as winnowing. See this lady, what is she doing? She is separating heavier grains from the lighter husk. The lighter husk particles, they go away from the heavier grains and the heavier grains fall in this tub. They use a method called as winnowing even in our houses. The lighter particles, they go away. They are lighter, so they fall away, and the heavier particles, they settle down. Children, see this lady, what is she doing? She has taken a basket like thing and she is holding it higher from the ground and applying force so that heavier particles will fall near to her and the lighter husk particles will go away from her. Even this person is also doing the same thing. So what is the method involved here, children? Winnowing. It is an agricultural method, children. They separate grain from chaff or grain from the husk. They also separate the small pest also, children. The loosening of grain can be done by using this method. Have you seen this churner, children, in your house? This churner is used to churn curd. Your mother keeps moving this stick. What happens? She continuously moves the stick so that the lighter butter, you can see this white color butter coming out. This butter can be separated from the buttermilk on continuous churning. Here, the heavier buttermilk settles down at the pot and the lighter butter comes up. The insoluble substances, that is the butter and the buttermilk, they have been separated. What is the process involved here? Sedimentation. Children, what is sedimentation? Look at this picture. I have taken sand in this bowl and I am adding it slowly in the glass of water. After some time you can see as sand is insoluble, what is happening? It is settling down at the bottom of the glass because it does not dissolve in water. After some time you can see it is settling down. So what is this process called as? Sedimentation. If you take water in a beaker and add sand, the sand will not dissolve and settles down at the bottom of the beaker. Here you can use the sedimentation process for the removal of solids from the drinking water. The uses of sedimentation are removal of solids from the drinking water or from the waste waters. Children, solids, they settle down and you can easily remove these solids from the running water. So what happens to the water which is floating? You can easily hold it above the container and slowly allow the liquid which is floating into another container. So this is a beaker of water which has sediment at the bottom. Sediment means what? After the sand is mixed with water, the sand settles down because it is not soluble in water. So the water is now called as supernatant and the sand which has settled down after sedimentation is called as sediment. If you hold it slowly onto another container in a slanting position, you can separate supernatant. The liquid which is floating flows down and the sediment settles down. So separating a mixture of sand and water using sedimentation is called as decantation. So the top floating water and other substances can be taken into another beaker. This process is called as decantation. What is the use of decantation, children? It removes insoluble solids from a liquid. What is the example? You can separate sand, rocks, soil and water. Children, you can also separate oil and water because oil is not soluble in water. As oil floats on water, you can easily hold it upright down in a slanting position into another beaker. You can remove the oil and separate water from oil. So, what is decantation, children? The precipitate sediments down at the bottom of the beaker and the supernatant liquid can be slowly taken into another container by holding it in a slanting position, and the clear water can be removed from this, separated from this precipitate. What is this process called as, children? Decantation. Now, let us see this activity. In the starting of the class, we have taken a glass of water and we have taken few substances in this. You can see some substances are floating. Let me add some water. Now you can see some substances are floating and some substances have sunk in water. Can you separate these substances? Yes. See, the lighter particles which are floating can be separated again. Pencil and a cap. Now what are the substances which are settling down? The heavier substances have sunk here. So can you separate them? Yes. You can take another beaker. So this is the sedimentation. The heavier substances will settle down after some time. So here what has happened? Sedimentation has taken place. Now decantation. Let us see what is decantation. Hold it in a slanting position and separate the substances which are floating here. The top liquid slowly is collected in another container. This is supernatant liquid which is taken in another container. See, all the substances which are sunk in this water have been collected separately, and this liquid which was there in this have been separated. So what is this process of separation called as decantation? Now let us come to another topic, filtration. How do you drink a cup of tea, children? Your mother takes a container, pours some water, adds some tea powder, sugar, and lets it to boil. After some time you can see a brown color liquid form. Then she adds milk, again she boils it, right? And then you get a cup of tea. But in between, what is she doing? She has separated the tea leaves from the tea, children. How did she separate it? By using a filter. See this picture, children. Here, this is a conical flask which is used in a laboratory. This is called as a funnel. In this funnel, we have taken a filter paper. So, if you want to separate tea powder and tea, you can pour the tea in this. The tea powder gets collected here and the tea gets collected here. So, we have separated tea powder and tea. What is this tea powder called as? Residue. And what is this tea now called as? Filtrate. So, what is this tea called as? Mixture. So, how did you separate the mixture of tea? By pouring it in a filter paper. We have separated tea powder and tea by using this filter paper. What is this process called as? This process is called as filtration. You can use this method also. Here, if you want to purify the water and separate it from the minute impurities present, you can tie a cloth to a water pot and you can filter it. In this process, you can see pure water settles down in the pot and the impurities will get collected on the cloth. This is a round bottom flask. This is a funnel in which a filter paper is taken. And if you pour, see here children, this is a conical flask. If you pour the mixture into this, you can collect filtrate in the container and the waste materials are collected in the filter paper. This is another method of filtration, children. This is also a type of funnel in which you can see small holes. Now this mixture, when it is passed through this funnel, the pure filtrate will be collected in this conical flask and the waste material will be collected in this funnel. So what is filtration, children? Impure water can be separated from the impurities. How? By using a filter paper. If you pour this impure water mixed with sand, if you pass it through the funnel containing a filter paper, the pure water will be collected as the filtrate. When it passes through the filter paper taken in a funnel, the sand gets collected in the funnel and the pure water is collected as the filtrate in the beaker. So, you remember this? Your mother uses a strainer or a filter. What is she doing? She separates tea from the tea powder, collects the pure tea in the cup. So, filtration is used in our daily life. You can separate solid substances from the liquid by using a process called as filtration. Let us see what are the applications of filtration, children. In the laboratories, scientists use this different filtration process for separating the mixtures which has different chemicals in it. In the industries also, you can separate different mixtures like oil, gas, food and beverage, pharmaceutical industries, etc. In different industries, we use this filtration methods. Children, the river has so many waste materials in it. So, how are you separating the river water and the waste materials? By a method called as filtration. Furnaces also use filtration to prevent the furnace elements from fouling the particulates. Let us come to another topic, that is sieving. Children, as soon as your mother buys a big bag of rice, she puts it in a sieve and separates bigger grains from smaller grains, or she separates husk from the grains. We use the sieve to separate smaller particles and bigger particles, but in solid form. So, that process is called as sieving. It can be used to separate larger and smaller substances in a mixture. You might have seen such types of sieves. Children, the most important thing you have to remember here is the size of the holes. You can see wheat flour taken in this sieve. See the size of the holes, children, they are so small. So this sieve is used to separate the light wheat flour. Now see the sieve, see the holes, it has bigger holes. So this sieve can be used to separate sugar and other impurities. So sugar is heavier, so it comes out. The other waste materials will be settled down here. So both are solid substances here, children. So two solid materials of smaller size can be separated. How are they separated? By passing it through the sieve. Scientists use these sieves for separating heavier and lighter particles. The lighter particles can pass through these holes. See the size of the holes. The heavier particles which are unable to pass through these holes can be separated in this sieve. So sieve opening is a very important thing here. Sieving is the container which has holes in it. If you take a sieve with smaller holes, then the lighter particles will come out and the larger particles will settle down in the container. So what is this container with holes called as sieve? What is this method called as sieving? In this method we can separate lighter particles and heavier particles or larger particles. Children, sand and gravel which are taken in this container can be separated. How? By a method called as sieving. In the house construction we use this method, isn't it? You might have seen during the plastering of the walls, they require fine sand. They allow the fine sand to pass through the net or the sieve. If you take the sieve with the small holes, then very fine sand can be collected and the gravels can be separated. So this can also be called as sieve or strainer. What are the uses of sieving, children? You can separate two dry substances. A mixture which contains two dry substances but with different sizes, larger and smaller particles, can be separated by using a sieve. So children, I hope you have understood the lesson. In this lesson, we have studied about the sinking particles and floating particles, soluble substances and insoluble substances. These are the two main properties we have to remember while separating the substances. We have seen about hand picking, winnowing, sedimentation, decantation and filtration. We have also studied about sieving, isn't it? So let us recall what we have studied. Children, what is hand picking? It is used to separate substances when their sizes are sufficiently large. Children, when do you use winnowing? If lighter particles have to be separated from heavy substances, winnowing can be used. Where do you use sedimentation and decantation? If you want to separate solid from liquid. Then when is sieving used, children? If you want to separate larger particles from smaller solid particles, then sieving can be used. Children, answer to these questions and improve your learning. Why is hand picking necessary after winnowing? What is winnowing? Explain where it is used. How do you separate sand and water from their mixture? Is it possible to separate sugar mixed with wheat flour? What is sieving? Where is it used? Children, for better learning and good practice, please download the worksheets from the SIET website. I hope you followed the lesson. Let us meet in the next part of separation of substances. In that lesson, we will be learning the different methods of separation of substances. Okay, children, sign off for now. Let us meet in another session. Thank you.